Ethical dilemmas in procedural medicine. Lessons from interventional pulmonology. Procedural medicine is often described in terms of skill. The emphasis is on execution, on the ability to navigate anatomy, manipulate instruments, and intervene with precision. Training reinforces this orientation. Competence is demonstrated through action, and professional identity is shaped accordingly. Over time, the proceduralist comes to be recognized by others and by oneself as someone who does. Yet the deeper structure of procedural practice is not defined by action alone. It is defined by decision. Each intervention presupposes a prior judgment that this act, at this moment, in this patient, is warranted. That judgment is rarely reducible to technical considerations. It emerges instead from a convergence of clinical information, professional responsibility, patient context, scientific evidence when available, and uncertainty. The procedure may be the visible event, but the decision that precedes it is where the work is most complex. This is why the central difficulty in procedural medicine is more than having the ability to perform procedures safely and effectively. It is a matter of discernment, not simply knowing whether action is justified, proportionate, and aligned with the patient's circumstances and values. Sometimes, the question is not only how to act, but whether any action is appropriate at all. The challenge, therefore, is not to intervene well, but to intervene appropriately. We begin to see how these decisions carry an ethical complexity that unfolds under conditions of uncertainty. They are seldom experienced as clearly defined ethical problems. More often, they take the form of a quiet unease, something that persists even after the decision itself. The terrain on which these decisions occur is structured by more than individual expertise. It is shaped by relationships, by roles, and by the demands of the setting itself. The proceduralist is not a single stable identity, but a composite of functions that coexist in practice. At different moments, and often simultaneously, one is a technician, a consultant, an emergency responder, a longitudinal caregiver, an advocate for the patient, and a representative of institutional interests. These roles are not sequential. They overlap and interact, sometimes reinforcing one another, sometimes pulling in different directions. Each requires a continuous movement between action and restraint. As the number of roles increases, so too does the complexity of obligation. Responsibilities accumulate, not in isolation, but in relation to others, patients, families, colleagues, standards of practice, and systems of care. The more interdependent the setting, the more layered the decision-making becomes. What appears straightforward from a technical perspective may carry different implications when considered from the standpoint of continuity of care, resource allocation, or professional accountability. This accumulation of obligations is what gives procedural decision-making its particular density, and it is this concentration of moral responsibility that shapes how decisions are ultimately made. What begins to emerge from this accumulation is a change in the nature of the obligation itself. As relationships become more interdependent, obligations do not simply increase in number. They become more closely intertwined. This produces what might be called moral density. Each decision carries implications across multiple domains at once, and as obligations thicken, interdependence deepens. The identity of the interventional pulmonologist reflects this multiplicity. At any given moment, one may be a technician, a consultant, an emergency responder, a primary physician, a palliative care provider, an advocate, a colleague, and a steward of institutional resources. The proceduralist is rarely acting in a single role, but in several at once. Each carries its own expectations, and these expectations do not always align. These roles are not sequential. They do not unfold one after another in a predictable order. They coexist, and their simultaneous presence is part of what makes procedural decision-making complex. Ethical dilemmas often arise when the demands of these roles point in different directions. Traditional ethical frameworks, such as the familiar four principles of beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, and justice, offer a way to name and organize potentially competing obligations. They may clarify what is at stake, but that does not always help resolve the tensions that arise between them. In practice, this is because ethical dilemmas rarely present themselves as a single principle in conflict with another. More often, they come into partial conflict, and the task is to interpret not only their relevance within a specific situation, but how they emerge from the interaction of several forces at once. In procedural medicine, these forces can be understood in terms of technical capability, professional responsibility, and clinical uncertainty. Technical capability defines what can be done, and advances in technology and training have expanded this capability significantly. Professional responsibility reflects what the physician feels obligated to do for the patient, based on knowledge, skill, experience, patient preferences, and standards of care. Clinical uncertainty, however, persists even as the clinical context changes. Outcomes cannot be predicted with complete confidence, and the applicability of general knowledge to an individual patient is often unclear. Ethical difficulty arises where these three forces converge. Within this convergence, the impulse to act deserves closer attention. In procedural medicine, beneficence, the obligation to act for the patient's good and to prevent harm, is deeply embedded in clinical training and professional identity. In procedural medicine, where the capacity to intervene is immediate and often effective, this impulse can become the default orientation. The question is not whether something can be done, but how best to act on behalf of the patient. At the same time, it is important to recognize that the impulse to act does not arise from a single source. Beneficence reflects a professional obligation grounded in training, standards, and responsibility. Benevolence, by contrast, reflects a more personal desire to help, to relieve suffering, and to respond to physical, emotional, psychological, or spiritual distress. In practice, these are often aligned. Under conditions of uncertainty, however, they can diverge, and the desire to act may be stronger than what responsibility alone would require. Recognizing this distinction can help explain why certain decisions feel more difficult than others. Consider a patient who declines further evaluation despite a diagnosis that would ordinarily prompt additional staging and treatment. From one perspective, the situation is governed by respect for autonomy. The patient is competent, informed, and expresses a clear preference. Yet the proceduralist's responsibility does not end with acknowledgement of that preference. The physician must decide whether responsibility ends with honoring the patient's wishes, or whether it includes a further obligation to explore the patient's understanding and to address fear or unrecognized concerns. The physician's role is to ensure that decisions are situated within a framework of understanding that is as complete as possible. Respect for autonomy does not eliminate responsibility, it reshapes it. A different form of tension may arise in interactions with colleagues. Observing a colleague's error during a procedure introduces a dilemma that is less about technical skill than about responsibility. The challenge is relational and professional. The physician must weigh obligations to the patient against loyalty to a colleague, while also considering uncertainty about the clinical significance of the error. Speaking up may protect the patient but strain a professional relationship. Remaining silent preserves collegiality, but may allow harm to go unaddressed. Responsibility is not confined to one's own actions. It extends to the actions of others within a shared professional space. Silence itself becomes a form of decision-making with consequences. In resource-constrained environments, the structure of the dilemma changes again. When two patients require the same intervention and only one can receive it, the decision cannot be grounded solely in individual clinical need. The focus shifts from individual and interpersonal responsibility to institutional responsibility and broader considerations of fairness and prioritization. The proceduralist becomes, in effect, a steward of limited resources. They may be capable of helping either patient, but cannot help both given the limits of existing resources. Uncertainty persists regarding outcomes, and the decision about whom to treat must be made in real time. Here, restraint is not simply a personal decision, but an expression of systemic constraints. The moral weight lies in recognizing that any decision will leave one obligation unmet. Across these different situations, a common feature is the presence of uncertainty. Not simply uncertainty as incomplete knowledge, but uncertainty about the consequences of action or inaction. Outcomes are probabilistic, patient preferences may evolve, and institutional contexts may shift. Decisions are often made without the possibility of full resolution. Within this setting, the impulse to intervene exerts a strong influence. It is reinforced by training, by culture, and by the visibility of action as a form of care. To do something is often equated with helping, yet the motivation to act is not uniform. It may arise from professional obligation, but also from a more personal desire to relieve suffering or avoid the discomfort of inaction. In conditions of uncertainty, these motivations can diverge. The difficulty, then, is not simply understanding the situation. It is deciding what to do next. When dilemmas arise, the task is not to eliminate uncertainty, but to work within it. This begins with clarifying the situation, what is happening, who is involved, and where responsibility lies. It requires recognizing the ethical tension and identifying which obligations are in conflict and why they cannot be easily reconciled. Ethical frameworks may help structure this thinking, but they rarely provide definitive answers. What matters is the process of reasoning and a sustained attentiveness to what is at stake. Because these decisions do not occur in isolation, engaging others becomes essential. Patients, colleagues, and institutions each contribute perspectives that can refine understanding and distribute responsibility more appropriately. Dialogue does not eliminate difficulty, but it can prevent decisions from becoming overly narrow or overly personal. These questions do not eliminate uncertainty, but they help structure it, allowing the proceduralist to move from impulse toward deliberation. Practical ethics does not resolve these tensions completely. It remains contextual and grounded in human judgment. Sometimes, the most consequential decisions do not involve action, but require restraint, reconsideration, or the willingness to pause. Decisions are made without full certainty, and some aspects of every situation remain unresolved. Ethical practice in this sense is not defined by the application of principles alone, nor fully determined by guidelines and algorithms. It rests instead on the capacity to engage with complexity and an acceptance that uncertainty is not a failure of medicine, but an inherent part of it. The difficulty is not just understanding the situation, it is deciding what to do next. And that is where ethical practice takes place.